Hi guys, and welcome to my latest batch of mini reviews where basically I review 7 films in the time that it would normally take me to review just one. It doesn't feel like it's been more than 5 minutes since I last did one of these, but I have been on an absolute tear recently with my horror films, and already I have stacked up another 7 films which I thought would be perfect for this particular series. If this is your first time watching one of these types of videos, let me say that this is not a ranking. I'm going to be taking these films in the exact order in which I watched them, saying a few words about them, giving them a quick score, and then moving on. So let's dive into it, and we'll start with this one. This is a film about a YouTuber. He's not a very good one. I don't know how many subs he's got, but he's not getting anywhere with it, put it that way. The trouble is, though, he's not treating it like a hobby. He's treating it like something where if he doesn't get to 1 million subs, he's going to feel really depressed and without worth. It's not a healthy situation to be in. At least he's picked a good subject, though. He's not doing something like bird watching, where you're just never going to get to 1 million subs. He's trying to do that whole big personality thing where certain YouTubers will just wake up and do really random stuff, but they'll do so in a really full of beans sort of way. And there are people out there, I think, on YouTube who've just done channels like that and got to like millions of subs. My kids watch some of them. There's a guy called Unspeakable, maybe. Mr. Beast might be another one that I've personally heard of, but I don't actually watch, so I couldn't say for sure. So this guy's trying to be like that kind of YouTuber, but he's just not very good at it. He's a really nice guy. He's funny as well, but if you're going to become like a real pro with like millions of subs, you've got to be like that 1% who's like really, really funny and great and stuff, and he's not quite that. What makes it worse for him, though, is that he's got this childhood friend who lives a few streets away who is one of those really famous YouTubers. He's made it big, and this guy just can't cope with the fact that his friend has made it big, so he's really depressed, he's really fed up. He keeps trying and trying and trying. He keeps doing videos and nothing seems to work. So one day, he's driving his cab, because that's his day job. He's driving a cab around, I think it might be LA, could just be some random place in America. He decides to go on this murder spree where he just drugs people who get in his cab and then he kills them, and he's going to do a live stream showing this, and in his head this will be like something that blows the internet away and he'll get like loads of subs and views and things. And that does actually happen, and he's allowed to get away with this for quite some time because nobody rings the police because they think that it's fake. The live stream is like, half of them think, oh my god, this is real, it's so exciting, and the other half is like, oh, it's got to be fake, it's got to be fake. And at one point, this guy goes around to some of these famous YouTuber houses and kills them, and then the people in the chat are like, oh, it's a collaboration, it's got to be. They're all going to stand up at the end of this and go, ha, we got you. You know, they think it's some big prank that's going on. So it's a fascinating film. The horror aspect of it is a little mild. If you're going into this hoping for good kills, if you like films like Friday the 13th and stuff, and you like elaborate, clever, bloody kills, you're not going to get that with this film. The kills are really skimped over. That's not the point of it. It's more about the characterization and the dialogue and just being fascinated with how YouTube can just go badly wrong for some people, basically. But I found it a really, really good watch. And so I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5. You probably thought I was going to give it more than that, but I don't know. It's not a film that I'll go back to, I don't think. But I almost watched it like a car crash in front of my eyes, like this, like, oh my God. Because I could sort of believe that eventually something like this will happen on YouTube. But yeah, this one's worth a watch. I think I saw it on Netflix. This is a found footage film about a group of friends in New York, I think, who decide to open an extreme haunted house. If you don't know what one of those is, it's basically like a ghost train, but you walk around it rather than get a ride around it. So we follow these characters as they're decorating the various rooms and setting up the scares and things like that. But strange things are happening as they're doing this. Costumes are moving by themselves, weird stuff's happening, apparitions are appearing and stuff, and they're getting really freaked out, these characters, and it's all building up to opening night, which is basically like ground zero for the movie, because we see some of the chaos that happens on opening night in the prologue. You know, people screaming, customers running for the door, and crazy shit happening. And then we go back into the past and watch what led to that, with the main characters creating the haunted house and getting it ready and stuff. Normally I don't like that type of structure in a film where you get to see some of the main action first and then we're constantly building up to get back to that point. I'm not a big fan of that storytelling technique, but it just about works for this film. What I do like about this one is that you never really find out fully what's behind what goes on in the film. It very much takes the Blair Witch way of doing things. You know, in that film, you never really got to understand what the hell the witch had to do with it. You never saw the witch. A lot of unanswered questions at the end of that film, and Hell House does exactly the same thing. It's the sort of film you can watch and then for days afterwards you're still pondering what the hell you saw and what went on. You don't get clear-cut definitive answers. So if you're the sort of person who needs everything wrapped up, then you might not be a fan of this. But I personally really enjoyed it. It's got a very good atmosphere and quite a few really good scare scenes. So I'm going to give this one 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed it. So having enjoyed the first one, I dived straight into the second one. All three of them are available on Shudder at the moment, I think. This second one's not as good as the first, though. So at the start of this one, the same house from the first movie is now abandoned because of all the murders that took place, but it's still a source of fascination in the media. People are still talking about it in documentaries and things, and random people can't help turning up at this place, breaking in and filming the insides on their phone and stuff, and then they get into difficulties when they realise they can't get out because the place is still haunted and the spirits in this place like to block people off from getting out. There are a few problems with this second film. Firstly, it doesn't have that extreme haunted house theme that the first film had, because this time around we're basically just talking about a deserted, derelict building. I mean, there's still lots of really great suspenseful scenes, lots of moments that genuinely gave me gooseflesh. The people who made these films, I presume that it's the same bunch of people each time. They definitely know how to put a scare scene together. But yeah, I missed that haunted house theme. And also, the final act of this film decides to just explain everything for the whole two films. Now, one of the creepiest things about the first film was that you didn't get lots of explanation. This time around, it's all laid out for you. There's even like a ghostly character who just starts talking about the plot and stuff, and it's like, no, that's a major no, don't do that. You've set up this whole thing, this franchise, and it's going well, and now you're just going to give all the secrets away in one crazy 10-minute spell at the end of this second film. So that, I was really disappointed by that. I'd also say that this second film is more fragmented. There's lots of different groups throughout the film that we follow, whereas the first film just focused on one set of characters and you got to know them and you're following their story for the most part. This time around, like I said, lots of different groups, and for that reason I couldn't quite bring myself to really get into the second film as much as I did the first. But just for the fact that a lot of the scare scenes are still very, very competent in this, I'll still give it a reasonable score of 2.5 out of 5, but it's definitely down on the first one. And you know what? After I'd watched this second one, I didn't then feel like going on and watching the third, because I'm not going to be reviewing the third one in this video. I decided after the second one that, yeah, that's probably it for me, at least for now. Maybe I'll try and watch the third one and stick it in my next mini reviews video, but having watched the first two basically side by side, I just didn't feel like going on with it. That's how bad the final act of this film was. So there's this Texas Chainsaw film that you might have seen. It's one of the middle ones. It's called Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation. It's got Renee Zellweger in it. The guy who made that, Kim Henkel his name is, he must have gotten the green light at some point to make another Texas Chainsaw film, because he wrote a script for it. And then I'm guessing he was taken off it and the studio went in a different direction completely. But Henkel decided to still make a film out of his script, albeit obviously he had to change it around so that it was no longer a Texas Chainsaw film. So what we have here with Butcher Boys is basically that film, which started out a Texas Chainsaw film but became something different entirely. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation, but this film is a little bit better than that. It's a film which you couldn't identify it as a Texas Chainsaw film in the beginning, because it starts out something completely different. We follow these characters who are trying to escape Mexican gangsters running through all these deserted streets and things. This film starts off, it feels like Judgment Night with Emilio Estevez to begin with, and then somehow we get to the final act and we're in a Texas Chainsaw film. It's really weird. We get a standard dinner table scene with lots of villains with wild personalities winding each other up, whilst you have a female character strapped to the end of the table. It's totally Texas Chainsaw. As to whether you're into that, I don't know, personally, as I go through the Texas Chainsaw films on any rewatch, I just get fed up of all the dinner table scenes. My biggest problem with this film is that there's lots and lots of villains, but they all seem completely unkillable. I mean, they all take a battering at various points. They all seem to die at various junctures, and then they come back. And it's like, can you just kill some of these villains? Because what are you, like, planning for 6 sequels or something? Just kill some of them off. Give us some cheer moments, but we don't get that. If you have seen The Next Generation, you'll know that the last 10 minutes are absolutely bonkers. There's like a plane and a limo with a weird guy in it who picks up the main girl and takes her out of there, and there's an old couple in a camper van who get involved. It's a crazy sort of Benny Hill-esque last 10 minutes that finishes the film off. Kim Henkel does a similar thing with this film. He gives you this ridiculous last 10 minutes where shit's just happening all over the place. Wacky things happen, and what the hell is going on? But overall, I'm still not into his style in particular, and I'm going to give this one 2.5 out of 5. If you didn't like The Next Generation, I wouldn't say that that's a reason to avoid this film, but just bear in mind that this is absolutely an offshoot of The Next Generation. Just a film done slightly different to that. It is a little bit better, but it's not essential viewing. I've seen a lot of crocodile and alligator related horror films over the years. Good ones that come to mind are Eaten Alive, Crocodile, and more recently Crawl. This one is quite well known, I think, but it's always one that's escaped me until now. Because of when it came out, early 80s, it sort of does for alligator films what Joe Dante did for Piranhas, what Spielberg did for shark films. This one, though, is definitely closer to Joe Dante's Piranha in terms of tone and feel. It's got that same relationship between its main 2 characters, which I think is quite cute. Robert Forster plays the main guy in this, and he's really good value. And I really like the woman who's the main female lead as well. I've never heard of her before, but she's really decent in this. I like the character interactions between the main 2. And everything to do with the actual alligator is great as well. You get some really nice, crunchy, gory deaths in this. Practical effects are very, very good. You get lots of scary scenes in the sewers beneath the city where the film takes place. And even once the alligator goes above ground, there's lots of good stuff to enjoy after that. Lots of funny moments in the film as well. It is literally like Joe Dante finished Piranha and then went and made an alligator film, except I must stress, I don't think he had anything to do with this. It's just a film which feels very, very similar to Piranha. So I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5. It is absolutely the best film, in my opinion, being talked about in today's video. And as soon as I'd watched it, I immediately went on eBay to see if there was a Blu-ray available. There was, but it was like £40 or something, so I'm guessing it's got a little bit rare. A bit too much money for me at the moment, but certainly this is a film I am definitely intending on going back to. There is a sequel called Alligator 2: The Mutation, but I've heard that that is terrible and has a much, much lower budget, so I'm not in a rush to see that one. But yeah, this original Alligator film, pwah, bee's knees. There is a character in the Friday the 13th remake who is an absolute arsehole. His name's Trent, I believe. He's absolutely infamous among Friday the 13th fans, this guy. Now, this film, The Last Experiment, this is the first time I've ever seen the actor who plays Trent doing another film. And I'm glad that I've seen him doing something else, because I can now think of him as a person, an actor with talent as he is, rather than just, you know, some one-note arsehole from Friday the 13th. In this film, he's one half of a friendship duo who sign up to some medical experiments. It's a situation where basically random people agree to be guinea pigs for medical firms so they can test their latest drugs or something, and they might get paid like a couple of grand for doing this. We had this horrible situation in the UK about 10 years ago. It might be further away than that now, maybe 15 years ago. A bunch of people signed up for similar experiments and it went completely wrong, and they all turned into like variations of the Elephant Man. Their heads ballooned up and they lost fingers and stuff. It was big news, and I still remember the horrific pictures in the newspapers and stuff. It was really horrible. This being a horror film, these drugs are not going to be great for these characters as well, obviously, and so you get all these patients turning into like zombified creatures and stuff. The guy who played Trent in Friday the 13th, I can't remember the actor's name, I can't remember his character in this film, so let's just call him Trent. he's lucky enough to get the placebo, so he's not affected by the drugs. And so in the back half of the film, he's got to escape this medical institution, but there are zombified people running around trying to get him, and then the government turns up to try and put a lid on the whole situation and kill anybody, regardless of whether they're infected or not. So Trent has to deal with that threat as well. It sounds like an all right film, but I couldn't get gripped by it somehow, and it's a very dirty film visually as well. There's lots of disgusting things in it, like characters carrying bags of shit around and roach attacks and just stuff that made me want to turn away from the screen and play on my phone rather than actually watch the film. And I don't know, I was on life support for the last sort of 20-30 minutes, just kind of tediously follow it to the end so that I could at least do this mini review. But I wouldn't recommend this one. I'm going to give it 1.5 out of 5, but at least I got to see the actor who played Trent doing another film. So finally today we have the long-awaited sequel to The Devil's Rejects. Now, I really like the first one in this series, House of a Thousand Corpses, great horror film, and even though I think The Devil's Rejects is less, it was still fascinating watching the focus switch entirely to the Fireflies like Baby and Otis. It was an interesting film full of great dialogue and very, very different from the first one. This third film just has no point to it. I did not enjoy it one bit. The characters have not evolved at all from their experiences in the second film. So basically all you've got here is just the surviving members of the family on a kind of road trip, being really mouthy and volatile and occasionally killing people, and there's just very little point to it, honestly. It doesn't help the fact that Sid Haig's not in the film, because I think he died during the early part of filming. He's in one scene right near the start, and then they have to sort of write him out to explain why he's not in the rest of the film. Richard Brakes comes in to play a sort of replacement for Sid Haig, but he's just not as good. So I'll give the film a little bit of sympathy for the fact that, you know, one of its best characters couldn't be in the movie, but the rest of this film, there's literally no point to this existing. You know, I see why Devil's Rejects was a good idea. It was an interesting expansion on the first film. It took things in a different direction, but this third film has no reason for being. It's 2 hours of just these arsehole characters on a road trip, finishing up with a shootout in Mexico, and that's it. There's no horror film here to speak of. The film is way too up its own arse in believing that these are like the best characters in history. There are times when you just see slow-mo shots of like Baby and Otis walking down a corridor, like in ultra slow motion, like, yeah, you love these characters, and look, we're going to give you some slow motion of them being super cool and badass. And it's like, yeah, they're interesting characters within those first two movies, but they're not like amazing characters I love, you know. I don't need to see them in slow motion. At the end of the day, they are just complete arseholes. So I'm not a fan of Three from Hell, and I'm not being snooty towards these characters or this series. I really, really like the first film, and I sort of quite enjoyed the second one as well. But for me, this is Rob Zombie's worst film by far that I've ever seen from him. I'm going to give it 1 out of 5. Right, that's it for today. That's the end of today's batch of mini reviews. Hopefully I will be back for another volume very soon. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.